The reluctant guardian. The diplomatic shuttle pierced Etheria's upper atmosphere with all the subtlety of a blunt hammer. Captain Thorn Rayner gripped the seat restraints as the vessel shuddered, his knuckles whitening beneath tactical gloves. He'd endured combat drops into active war zones with less turbulence. Earth vessels, came a lilting voice from across the cabin. Primitive engineering barely evolved beyond combustion engines. Thorn kept his expression neutral as Princess Lyra Vex of the Etherian royal house regarded him with thinly veiled contempt. Her silver-blue skin shimmered with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed with her evident displeasure. The elongated crest that crowned her head, a mark of pure Etherian nobility, twitched slightly. "The shuttle meets interplanetary safety standards, Your Highness," Thorn replied evenly. "Though I admit it lacks the aesthetic refinements of your royal fleet." "Standards created by humans," she said, pronouncing the word as though it tasted bitter. Hardly a compelling endorsement. 3 weeks. That was how long Thorn had been assigned as the princess's security detail. 3 weeks that felt like an eternity. When Admiral Lau had briefed him on this assignment, she'd emphasized its diplomatic importance, the first human officer assigned to the Etherian royal court in the decade since first contact. What she hadn't mentioned was the princess's spectacular talent for condescension. The shuttle stabilized as it entered Etheria's stratosphere. Outside the viewport, crystalline towers pierced the violet clouds, their faceted surfaces refracting sunlight into prismatic halos. Etheria's capital city was a testament to their technological superiority, buildings that seemed to defy gravity, vehicles that moved through the air in perfect synchronicity, all powered by the mysterious energy source the Etherians called Luminite. "Prepare for landing," the shuttle's AI announced. "Welcome to Veritas, jewel of the Etherian Confederation." Princess Lyra rose with fluid grace, her ceremonial robes cascading around her tall frame. "Captain Rayner, do try not to gawk like a child at a light display. The court will already find your presence challenging." Thorn stood, smoothing the formal United Earth Diplomatic Corps uniform that felt too tight across his shoulders. "I'll do my best to avoid embarrassing you, Princess." "A futile promise," she said with the ghost of what might have been amusement. "But I appreciate the sentiment." The landing platform extended to meet their shuttle, a translucent bridge materializing from seemingly nowhere. Thorn stepped out first, as protocol demanded, scanning for threats despite the immaculate security of Etherian airspace. Old habits died hard. An entourage of Etherian officials waited, their crests of varying heights and colors indicating positions in the complex social hierarchy Thorn had studied but still didn't fully comprehend. At their center stood Chancellor Vren, the princess's maternal uncle and regent during her extended diplomatic mission to Earth. "Niece," Vren said, his voice resonating with harmonics that the translator only partially captured. "Your return brings light to our halls." "Uncle," Lyra bowed slightly, the exact degree of deference calculated to honor without submission. "I return with insights from Earth. And..." She gestured vaguely toward Thorn, a security attachment. Chancellor Vren regarded Thorn with eyes that shifted between deep purple and black, a biological feature that made Etherians impossible to read by human standards. "Captain Thorn Rayner," Thorn introduced himself with the formal chest-touch gesture that his cultural briefings had indicated was appropriate. "United Earth Diplomatic Corps. I'm honored to serve as Princess Lyra's security detail during this exchange." "A human guardian," Vren said, his crest rippling with what might have been amusement. "Fascinating choice, General Kurza." A stern-faced Etherian in military attire stepped forward, her crest bearing the distinctive crimson tips of the warrior caste. "The princess's security team has been augmented, not replaced. Captain Rayner will coordinate with my personnel." General Kurza's translator delivered her words flatly, but her posture conveyed volumes. She didn't want him here any more than the princess did. Thorn followed the procession through the grand archway, a crystalline structure that seemed to bend light itself. The palace interior was even more spectacular than the external view, living architecture that responded to the presence of its inhabitants, walls that shifted with patterns of energy, and artificial gravity that created impossible gardens floating in midair. Your quarters, Princess Lyra gestured toward a doorway that materialized in what had appeared to be a solid wall. Adjacent to mine, as your protective duties apparently require. The room beyond was spacious by human standards but Spartan by Etherian ones. A simple sleeping platform, atmospheric controls, and a viewport overlooking the central spire of the city. "Thank you, Your Highness," Thorn said, setting down his regulation duffel. "Will there be a security briefing with your existing team?" Lyra's eyes shifted to a darker blue. "General Kurza will provide whatever information you require. Though I doubt your human combat training will prove relevant here. With respect, Princess, protection principles are universal." "Universal?" She laughed, a sound like crystal chimes. "You speak of universality when your species has barely left its own solar system? When your longest-lived humans reach perhaps a century? When your understanding of quantum dimensions remains theoretical?" Thorn kept his expression neutral. "Different perspectives can be valuable. Sometimes those closest to a situation miss what outsiders can see." "How very diplomatic," she said, her tone suggesting it was anything but a compliment. "The welcoming ceremony begins in 3 hours. Try to make yourself presentable." She departed in a swirl of ceremonial robes, leaving Thorn alone in the alien quarters. He exhaled slowly, removing his formal jacket and inspecting the room methodically, a habit formed during 15 years of military service. The universal translator, implanted at the base of his skull, tingled slightly as it processed the ambient conversations beyond his quarters. Designed to handle Etherian dialects, it still struggled with the subtleties of their language's harmonic layers. A discrete panel on the wall illuminated, displaying General Kurza's stern face. "Captain Rayner, report to the security hub for integration briefing." "On my way, General." The security hub turned out to be a circular chamber deep within the palace complex, its walls displaying holographic representations of every corridor, chamber, and approach vector. Etherian security personnel moved with practiced efficiency, their movements synchronized like components in a well-tuned machine. "Our defensive systems are quantum-linked," General Kurza explained without preamble. "Any unauthorized presence triggers an energy cascade that immobilizes the intruder." Thorn studied the displays. "Impressive. But systems can be compromised. What's your protocol for kinetic threats?" A ripple of what might have been disdain passed through the general's crest. "Kinetic threats? You mean physical projectiles? How primitive." "Primitive but effective under the right circumstances," Thorn countered. "Even advanced civilizations have vulnerabilities." "Perhaps in human experience," Kurza replied. "The princess's safety is guaranteed by technology beyond your comprehension. Your presence is merely a diplomatic courtesy." "Then I'll try to stay out of your way," Thorn said, knowing when to pick his battles. "But I'll need full access to the princess's schedule, movement patterns, and a direct communication link." The general hesitated, then nodded curtly. "Granted. Though I warn you, Etherian court protocol is complex. Violations can be viewed as hostile acts." "I'll study carefully," Thorn promised. "One question, has the princess received any threats recently?" Something flickered across Kurza's face, too quick for Thorn to interpret, but enough to register. "Why do you ask?" "Standard security assessment," Thorn said casually. "Establishing baseline threat profiles." "The princess's activities attract political attention," Kurza said carefully. "Her advocacy for closer human-Etherian relations is controversial in certain circles." "Interesting." The briefing had mentioned nothing about Lyra being pro-human. Her personal demeanor certainly didn't suggest it. The welcoming ceremony was held in the Grand Resonance Chamber, where hundreds of Etherian dignitaries gathered in concentric circles around a central platform of floating crystal. Thorn positioned himself precisely 3 steps behind Princess Lyra as protocol dictated, scanning the assembled crowd with practiced vigilance. The princess wore ceremonial attire that transformed her from merely striking to breathtaking, living fabrics that shifted with her movements, and a crown-like headpiece that amplified her natural bioluminescence. Even the most seasoned diplomats seemed momentarily awed by her presence. Chancellor Vren addressed the gathering, his words flowing between standard language and harmonic undertones that Thorn's translator couldn't fully process. But the message was clear enough. Princess Lyra's diplomatic mission to Earth had strengthened ties between their worlds, opening new possibilities for exchange. The human officer's presence symbolized this new era of cooperation. Thorn noticed the subtle shift in the room's energy. Not everyone appreciated this symbolic gesture. Several elder Etherians, their crests adorned with ancient symbols, watched with unmistakable disapproval. The opposition council, whispered an Etherian aide standing nearby. Traditionalists who believe contact with younger species dilutes our cultural purity. Thorn nodded slightly in acknowledgement, filing the information away. Political opposition often created security risks. As the ceremony progressed, Princess Lyra moved with practiced grace through the ritual greetings. Thorn maintained his position, a silent shadow in formal dress uniform. The translator struggled to keep pace with the complex exchanges, but he understood enough to recognize the princess's skill at navigating the factional currents. Then he saw it, a flicker of movement at the chamber's upper tier. A displacement in the light patterns that didn't match the room's natural flow. Years of combat instinct kicked in. Thorn moved before conscious thought, 3 rapid strides bringing him to the princess's side just as something pierced the energy field above. "Down!" he shouted, tackling Lyra as a crystalline projectile shattered against the platform where she'd been standing. The fragments dispersed into burning vapor that scored the floor. Chaos erupted. Etherian security personnel activated defense protocols, energy barriers snapping into place around the dignitaries. Thorn kept his body positioned over the princess, scanning for additional threats. "Release me at once," Lyra demanded, her voice vibrating with both shock and outrage. "Hostile still active," Thorn reported calmly, helping her to a crouched position behind a structural column. "Stay down, Your Highness." Above them, a shadowy figure moved with impossible speed across the chamber's upper architecture. The Etherian security forces fired energy pulses that tracked too slowly, always a fraction behind the intruder. Thorn assessed, calculated, and acted. Drawing a compact device from his uniform, he activated it with a precise gesture. A focused electromagnetic pulse shot upward, intersecting with the chamber's energy field and creating a localized disruption. The assassin, suddenly visible in the energy cascade, stumbled. Thorn was already moving, launching himself up and across an architectural feature that human physiology shouldn't have been able to navigate. His body arced through the air with practiced precision, intercepting the assassin mid-leap. They collided with bone-jarring force, tumbling onto a suspended platform. The assassin, humanoid but not Etherian, hissed through a breathing apparatus, striking with augmented strength. Thorn parried the blow, his movements fluid and measured despite the alien gravity. 3 seconds of intense combat ended with Thorn driving his attacker into the platform's surface, a restraint field generator already clamped to the assassin's wrist. The field activated, immobilizing the threat. Silence fell across the chamber as Thorn stood, breathing slightly elevated but otherwise composed. Below, hundreds of Etherian faces stared up at him, some in shock, others in calculation. Princess Lyra emerged from behind the column, her expression unreadable as she gazed up at the human who had just demonstrated combat abilities far beyond what any Earth military officer should possess. "Interesting," she said, her voice carrying perfectly through the chamber. "Perhaps I've underestimated you, Captain Raynor." And for the first time since their meeting, Thorn thought he detected genuine curiosity beneath her arrogance. The Cosmic Convergence. The assassin's quarters in the Etherian security complex were austere, a transparent cube suspended within a larger chamber, surrounded by energy fields that rippled with quantum disruption patterns. Thorn stood outside, studying the captured figure with practiced detachment. "Navarian mercenary," General Kurza stated, her posture rigid as she joined him. Genetically enhanced for stealth operations. Advanced neural implants. Not your typical assassin, Thorne observed. Someone invested significant resources in this attempt. Which raises the question of who, Princess Lyra said as she approached, her ceremonial attire replaced by a more practical bodysuit of shifting metallic hues. Despite the assassination attempt mere hours ago, she maintained perfect composure. And why they would risk interstellar incident to eliminate me? Thorne turned to face her. Your stance on human-Etherian relations has made you enemies, I understand. Enemies, yes, she conceded. But not suicidal ones. The diplomatic fallout from my assassination would devastate any legitimate opposition faction. The princess's eyes narrowed as she studied Thorne, a calculating intensity that reminded him she was more than merely aristocratic decoration. More pressing is the question of you, Captain Raynor. Your intervention was unexpected. I'm trained to anticipate threats, he replied, deflecting. You moved before the attack manifested, General Kurza interjected. Our security systems detected nothing until the projectile was already launched. And your combat methods, Lyra continued, were not consistent with standard Earth military protocols. You navigated Etherian gravity differentials without adjustment difficulty. Impossible for an unmodified human. Thorne maintained his professional demeanor despite the increasing pressure. I adapt quickly, Your Highness. Perhaps, Lyra said, clearly unconvinced. Or perhaps Earth has sent us more than just a diplomatic gesture. Before Thorne could respond, Chancellor Vren arrived, his usual composed demeanor noticeably disrupted. The High Council demands answers, niece. The opposition faction is already suggesting this was staged to discredit them. Staged? Lyra's voice cooled several degrees. I nearly died, uncle. Politics rarely concerns itself with facts, Vren replied. Only perception. As the Chancellor and Princess discussed the political ramifications, Thorne turned his attention back to the captive assassin. Something about the neural implant configuration seemed familiar, not Etherian design, but not human either. I need to examine the projectile fragments, he said, interrupting the royal debate. All three Etherians looked at him with varying degrees of surprise. Our analysis is already underway, General Kurza stated. I'd like to see for myself, Thorne insisted. There may be markers your systems aren't calibrated to detect. Princess Lyra studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Show him. The forensic laboratory occupied an entire level beneath the security complex. Etherian technicians worked with equipment that made Earth's most advanced technology look primitive by comparison. The recovered fragments floated within a containment field, their molecular structure displayed in expansive detail on surrounding holographic screens. Thorne circled the display, his eyes narrowing as he identified a specific molecular pattern within the crystalline structure. There, he pointed. That isotope signature, it's not natural to this system. The lead technician, an Etherian with delicate cranial ridges indicating scientific specialization, enlarged the area. Correct. We've identified it as originating from the Cygnus arm. Not just any part of the Cygnus arm, Thorne said quietly. That's a hegemony marker. The room went silent. The Arcturus hegemony was a shadowy collective of systems that had steadfastly rejected diplomatic contact with both Earth and Etheria. Their technological development was rumored to be extraordinary, but their isolationist policies kept them shrouded in mystery. How would a human officer recognize a hegemony isotope? General Kurza demanded, her crest flaring with suspicion. Before Thorne could formulate a response, Princess Lyra spoke. Because he's not merely a human officer, are you, Captain? The reflexes, the recognition patterns. Her eyes widened slightly. You're Starfall. The word hung in the air like a physical presence. Thorne's expression remained neutral, but his silence was confirmation enough. What is Starfall? Chancellor Vren demanded. A myth, General Kurza answered, her voice unusually quiet. A rumored Earth program to create enhanced operatives capable of interfacing with alien technology. Genetic modification at the cellular level. Lyra's eyes never left Thorne's face. Not just genetic modification. Neural integration with recovered technology. Technology rumored to be of Etherian origin. This is impossible, Chancellor Vren declared. Our technological sharing agreements explicitly prohibit. Not sharing, Thorne finally spoke. Recovery. From the Cygnus incident, 50 years ago. The Etherians exchanged glances loaded with unspoken meaning. The Cygnus incident was classified at the highest levels, an Etherian exploration vessel lost with all hands in an unexplained disaster. Officially, it had been a navigational error. Unofficially. You're saying Earth recovered our technology, Lyra said carefully. And used it to create you? I'm saying there's much that both our governments haven't disclosed, Thorne replied. The hegemony has been probing both our defenses for decades. The Cygnus incident wasn't an accident, it was first contact with a hostile power. If this is true, General Kurza said slowly, then the attempt on the princess's life wasn't merely political. No, Thorne agreed. It's strategic. Eliminate a key advocate for human-Etherian cooperation, destabilize relations, and weaken both sides before the hegemony makes their true intentions known. Chancellor Vren's crest flattened against his skull, an indication of deep concern. These accusations require evidence. The evidence is in my DNA, Thorne said evenly. And in the neural architecture I shouldn't be able to perceive but can see operating throughout this palace. He gestured to the seemingly solid walls. There's a secondary network running parallel to your main systems, ancient technology that even your people have forgotten how to access fully. Princess Lyra stepped closer to him, her eyes shifting to a deep indigo that his briefings hadn't documented. Show me. Thorne hesitated, then raised his hand toward the nearest wall. Concentrating, he allowed the neural interface embedded in his cerebral cortex to activate fully for the first time since arriving. The wall rippled, patterns of light emerging that weren't visible to unaugmented perception. Symbols flowed across the surface, not modern Etherian script but something older, more fundamental. The architect's script, Lyra whispered, genuine awe in her voice. We've lost the ability to read it directly, but you. The Starfall program used recovered artifacts to modify human neural architecture, Thorne explained. I can perceive and interact with these systems because part of me is Etherian, cellular memory encoded into my DNA. You're a hybrid, General Kurza stated, her professional mask cracking to reveal astonishment. Not genetically, Thorne corrected. Neurologically. The program discovered that human brains were uniquely adaptable to certain types of alien technology, specifically, Etherian technology. Chancellor Vren looked deeply troubled. Earth has been developing weapons using our lost technology. Not weapons, Thorne said firmly. Bridges. The program was created to establish true understanding between our species at the deepest level, through shared consciousness architecture. Princess Lyra circled him slowly, her arrogance temporarily replaced by scientific curiosity. And they sent you here, knowing you could access our systems? I was sent to protect you, Thorne replied. My abilities were considered relevant to that mission. But not disclosed to us, Lyra noted. No. The program remains classified at the highest levels. The laboratory fell silent as the Etherians processed this revelation. Thorne could read the calculations happening behind their eyes, political implications, security concerns, scientific possibilities. We need to verify these claims, Chancellor Vren finally said. And we need to identify the true extent of the hegemony threat, General Kurza added. Princess Lyra's gaze hadn't left Thorne's face. We'll do both. Captain Raynor will submit to a comprehensive neural scan, under my personal supervision. The neural scanning chamber was located in the most secure area of the palace complex, a spherical room where gravity could be manipulated to optimize brain wave patterns. Thorn lay suspended in the center, surrounded by diagnostic equipment that hummed with quiet energy. Princess Lyra worked the controls herself, refusing assistance from the medical specialists. Her fingers moved with practiced precision across the interface panels. "You're more than a diplomat," Thorn observed as she calibrated the equipment. "I am many things," she replied without looking up. "As are you, apparently." "Why did you recognize the term, starfall?" he asked. "It's not in any official record." Her hands paused momentarily. "Because I've seen references in our deepest archives. Theoretical papers on human-Etherian neural compatibility. Papers written by my mother before her death." Thorn digested this information as the scanning equipment hummed to life around him. "Your mother was researching human-Etherian integration. She believed our species were connected, that humans were not merely another sentient race, but something more significant to our evolutionary path." Lyra's voice was clinical, but Thorn detected an undercurrent of emotion. Her theories were dismissed as romantic fantasy. The scan began, a gentle pressure building at the base of Thorn's skull where his neural implants connected to his natural brain architecture. "This will be uncomfortable," Lyra warned, unnecessarily. Thorn had endured far worse during his training. As the scan deepened, memories flickered at the edges of his consciousness. The Starfall training facility buried beneath Europa's ice, the first successful neural integration that had nearly killed him, the gradual awakening of perceptions that no human should possess. Lyra watched the displays intently, her scientific discipline momentarily overriding her habitual disdain. "Fascinating. Your hippocampal region shows structural modifications consistent with Etherian memory encoding." And here, she highlighted a section of the scan, quantum entanglement at the cellular level. "The key to perceiving the architect's script," Thorn confirmed, his voice steady despite the increasing pressure in his skull. "It should be impossible," she murmured, more to herself than to him. "Human neurology shouldn't be compatible with our quantum consciousness structures." "Yet here we are," Thorn replied. The scan intensified, penetrating deeper layers of his neural architecture. Thorn felt the moment when Lyra's equipment connected with his implants, a sudden expansion of awareness that made him gasp involuntarily. "What is it?" Lyra asked sharply. Connection established, Thorn managed, his vision blurring as new information cascaded through his consciousness. "I can see." The palace systems opened to his perception, not just the visible technology but the living architecture that pulsed beneath the surface. Energy patterns, quantum fields, data flows that existed beyond normal spacetime. And something else. Something watching. "We're not alone," Thorn said urgently, trying to rise despite the scanning field holding him in place. "There's a presence in the system." Lyra's fingers flew across the controls. "I'm not detecting any intrusion." "Not an intrusion, it's been here all along. Dormant. Waiting." Thorn struggled to articulate what he was perceiving. "It's in the oldest subsystems, woven into the palace foundations." The princess hesitated, then made a decision. She adjusted the scanner's parameters, linking her own neural profile to the system. "What are you doing?" Thorn demanded. "Seeing what you see," she replied grimly. "If there's a threat to my people, I need to understand it." The connection bloomed between them, not full telepathy, but a shared perceptual field that breached the boundaries of their separate consciousnesses. Thorn felt Lyra's presence, sharp and brilliant like a diamond catching light, her mind working with remarkable speed and precision. Together, they perceived the anomaly, a vast, patient intelligence that had embedded itself within the palace's quantum infrastructure centuries ago. Not Etherian, not hegemony, but something older. "The first ones," Lyra whispered, awe and fear mingling in her voice. "The beings who taught our ancestors to manipulate quantum reality." Through their shared perception, Thorn understood the implications immediately. The mythical precursors to Etherian civilization, believed extinct for millennia, had left something of themselves behind. And now, after centuries of dormancy, it was awakening. "It's been watching us," Thorn realized. Watching me. It recognized you, Lyra corrected. The neural patterns from the Starfall program, they must resonate with First One technology. The presence in the system became aware of their observation. Thorn felt its attention shift, focusing on the unique connection between human and Etherian consciousness. Convergence detected. The thought wasn't words so much as pure concept, transmitted directly into their shared perceptual field. The cycle continues. Images flooded their linked minds, visions of ancient Etheria, of Earth before human civilization, of stars being born and dying. The First Ones had seeded both worlds, guiding evolution along parallel paths, waiting for the moment when the species would reconnect. It's not just about diplomatic relations, Lyra said, understanding dawning in her voice. Our species were designed to complement each other. The hegemony knows this, they're trying to prevent the convergence. As suddenly as it had appeared, the presence withdrew, leaving behind fragments of knowledge too vast to fully comprehend. The scanning field dissolved, leaving Thorn and Lyra gasping as their neural connection severed. They stared at each other with new awareness, boundaries irreversibly altered. You understand now, Thorn said quietly. Why Earth created Starfall? Why I was sent here? Lyra nodded slowly, her earlier arrogance replaced by something more complex. The hegemony fears what our species might become together. The assassination attempt was just the beginning, Thorn finished. They'll keep trying to prevent the convergence. A commotion outside the scanning chamber interrupted them. General Kurza burst in, her crest flared in the Etherian expression of alarm. Multiple breaches detected in the outer defenses, she reported tersely. Hegemony signatures confirmed. Thorn was already moving, his enhanced reflexes bringing him to full alertness in seconds. They're coming for both of us now. Me for what I represent, you for what you know. Princess Lyra straightened, royal authority settling around her like armor. Then they will find us ready. General, activate the palace defense grid. Full lockdown protocols. And contact Earth, Thorn added. There are more Starfall operatives who can help us. No, Lyra said firmly. No reinforcements would arrive in time. We face this together, with what we have. She turned to face Thorn directly, her eyes shifting to the ceremonial violet of formal alliance. Captain Raynor, I believe I owe you an apology. I misjudged not only your abilities but the nature of your mission here. Apology accepted, Your Highness, Thorn replied, unable to suppress a slight smile. Though I must admit, your insults were quite creative. The corner of Lyra's mouth curved upward. A royal education has its advantages. She gestured toward the palace defenses already coming online around them. Shall we show the hegemony what happens when they threaten both our worlds? Thorn's neural implants connected seamlessly with the palace systems, guided by his new understanding of the ancient architecture. Information flooded his consciousness, enemy positions, attack vectors, weakness in their own defenses. Ready when you are, Princess, he said, weapon systems responding to his thoughts. Lyra stepped beside him, her own connection to the palace network strengthening his. Together, then. Let the convergence begin. As the first wave of hegemony attackers breached the outer perimeter, human and Etherian stood united, a bridge between civilizations, exactly as the first ones had intended millennia ago. And in the quantum substrate of the palace, something ancient watched with patient satisfaction as the cycle of reunion continued, exactly as designed.